Hey guys, welcome back to the American Diary. Sarah here. And what I'm about to show you isn't just another protest gone wrong. This is a full-scale war on federal law enforcement in America. Last night in California, a U-Haul truck accelerated at high speed towards security officers at a U.S. Coast Guard base. The driver, who had been sitting outside the facility all day during anti-ICE protests, suddenly reversed the truck like a battering ram directly at armed guards. They had no choice but to open fire, 20 to 30 rounds. The driver was hit, sped away, and is still on the loose. No arrests. Why? Because California police are prohibited by state law from cooperating with federal immigration enforcement. But here's what should terrify every American. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was the culmination of weeks of escalating violence against ICE agents across the country. And this morning, Attorney General Pam Bondi went nuclear. She didn't just condemn the violence. She put Democrat governors and politicians on notice, including Nancy Pelosi and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, with a message that sent shockwaves through Washington. Preserve your emails because you will be prosecuted for obstruction of justice. Let me be clear about what's happening. For months, Democrat politicians have been encouraging resistance to federal immigration enforcement. Pritzker has been on a media blitz, calling ICE agents jackbooted thugs and threatening to arrest them for doing their jobs. Nancy Pelosi has been working with activists to create an online ICE tracker to dox federal agents, exposing where they live, where their families are, putting targets on their backs. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is openly bragging about creating real-time portals to unmask ICE agents in the field. And what did Bondi say this morning? She looked straight into the camera during a Fox News interview and said, "If they think I won't charge them, they have not met me." She ordered Pelosi to preserve her emails. She warned Pritzker that the statute of limitations won't protect him forever. She made it crystal clear. If you obstruct federal agents, if you endanger their lives, if you encourage violence against law enforcement, you will face federal prosecution. This isn't rhetoric. This is the United States Attorney General putting elected officials on notice that interfering with federal law enforcement is a crime. And she has the receipts. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche sent formal preservation letters to Pelosi, to San Francisco District Attorney Brooke Jenkins, to Pritzker. That's legal language for "we're building a case." Now here's the part that should make your blood boil. While all of this was happening, while a truck was ramming a federal facility, while protesters were chanting "shoot ICE" in Chicago, while federal agents were being attacked in the streets, the mainstream media was silent. CNN wasn't covering it. MSNBC wasn't showing the footage. The New York Times buried it on page 12. Why? Because this level of coordinated violence against law enforcement doesn't fit their narrative. But we have the video, we have the statements, we have Bondi's warning, and we're going to show you exactly what the media refuses to acknowledge. America has entered what Bondi calls a new era of political violence, and Democrat politicians are fueling it. The California attack happened at 10 p.m. Thursday night outside Coast Guard Island in Alameda. Protesters had been there all day demonstrating against ICE's presence in the Bay Area. The U-Haul driver, whose identity still hasn't been released, sat in the truck for hours. Then, as officers stood guard at the base entrance, he threw the truck in reverse and floored it. Eyewitnesses said it was clearly intentional. He just hit the gas and sped toward them. Photographer Rick Villaroman told reporters that's when they opened fire. And get this, the truck also reportedly hit two bystanders during the chaos. The driver jumped out, checked his phone, got back in, and drove away. Hours later, still no arrest, still no California State Police involvement, because in sanctuary states, protecting federal officers apparently isn't a priority. Meanwhile, in Illinois, Governor Pritzker has been escalating his rhetoric to dangerous levels. He's not just criticizing ICE policy, he's threatening criminal prosecution of federal agents. In a Fox 32 interview, he said, "The tables will turn one day. These people should recognize they may not get prosecuted today, although we're looking at doing that, but they may get prosecuted after the Trump administration." Read between the lines, he's telling ICE agents, "We're coming for you. We're going to arrest you. And if we can't do it now, we'll wait until Trump is gone and then charge you retroactively." That's not political opposition. That's intimidation. That's obstruction. That's exactly what federal law prohibits.
They cannot impede federal officers doing their jobs. They're out there risking their lives every single day and night to keep the people of California safe. We are going to protect our men and women in blue. We're going to protect all of our law enforcement agents, and these politicians aren't going to get away with it anymore.
So what happened?
Let's break down exactly what's happening here, because this story has multiple layers that connect to a much bigger pattern of Democrat-led resistance to federal law enforcement. First, the California incident. Coast Guard Island in Alameda is a federal military installation. It's not some random street corner. It's a secure facility that requires clearance to enter. On Thursday night, protesters had gathered outside the base all day because reports suggested the Trump administration might use it as a staging area for ICE operations in the Bay Area. San Francisco Mayor London Breed had recently made a deal with the administration. If she could prove the city was cracking down on crime without federal intervention, Trump would hold off on deploying additional agents. But protesters weren't taking any chances. They set up camp outside the base. Among them was a U-Haul truck driver who sat in his vehicle for hours. Eyewitnesses said he was on his phone constantly, possibly coordinating with someone. Then around 10 p.m., everything changed. Security footage, which has now been released, shows the driver suddenly shifting into reverse. The truck accelerates backwards at dangerous speed directly toward the entrance gate where armed guards are stationed. It's not subtle. It's not an accident. The truck is being used as a weapon. The guards shout commands to stop. The driver ignores them. They open fire. 20 to 30 rounds hit the truck. The driver is struck but manages to keep control, speeds away from the scene, and disappears into the night. Here's what's absolutely insane. California law prohibits local and state police from cooperating with federal immigration enforcement in any capacity. So when this attack happened, an attempted ramming of a federal military installation, no California officers responded to assist. No coordination with ICE. No joint investigation. The driver is still at large. No arrests have been made because California politicians have decided that protecting federal facilities from violence is less important than maintaining their sanctuary state policies. Now let's talk about what Attorney General Pam Bondi said this morning, because it's a game changer. She went on Fox News and didn't mince words. She called out specific politicians by name, Nancy Pelosi, J.B. Pritzker, Lori Lightfoot, Brooke Jenkins, and told them they are being investigated for obstruction of justice.
So California police are not allowed to cooperate with ICE in any way, and they were not at the demonstration last night. So no one was there, Bill, to arrest the driver. And you have to imagine if this kind of thing happens again, and there's no backup for ICE, as the Attorney General Bondi alludes to, the administration may reconsider not sending in more agents if ICE is not allowed to do its job.
Agents, you cannot do that. This is huge. The Department of Justice is formally notifying elected officials that they are under investigation. Preservation letters are legal documents that require the recipient to save all communications related to the investigation because they may be used as evidence in criminal prosecution. Bondi isn't bluffing. She's building a case. And what exactly are these politicians being investigated for? Let me give you the receipts. Nancy Pelosi has been working with activist groups to create what they're calling an ICE tracker, an online portal where people can report the locations of federal agents in real time. Think about that for a second. A sitting member of Congress is helping build a tool to dox federal law enforcement officers, to expose where they are, where they're operating, potentially where they live. That's not transparency, that's endangerment. Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot went even further. She's been publicly bragging about creating a portal that unmasks ICE agents. Her exact words were about creating accountability for agents conducting raids. But here's the problem. Federal law specifically prohibits disclosing information that could lead to harassment or violence against federal officers. It's 18 U.S.C. Section 119. It's a felony, and Bondi just told her she's being investigated for it. Then there's J.B. Pritzker, the Illinois governor who's become the face of anti-ICE resistance. He hasn't just criticized the administration's immigration policy. That's politics. That's fair game. He's threatened to prosecute federal agents for doing their jobs. In a Fox 32 Chicago interview, he said agents who don't follow protocols, his word, not defined, could face state criminal charges. And when pressed on whether that means arresting ICE agents, he said, "The tables will turn one day."
You saw him
These people may not
reiterating
get prosecuted today,
critiques of
although we're
Mondani's
looking
lack
at
of
doing
experience,
that, but they
his
may get
friendliness
prosecuted
with
after the
Hamas
Trump
and
administration.
radical
Let
Islam
that sink
in
in.
Gaza.
A governor is
And
threatening
those are
to
really
arrest
having
federal law
Mondani
enforcement
rattled.
agents
He's
for
usually very
enforcing federal
slick, but he
law.
seemed
That's
to be
not
a
resistance.
little bit
That's
uncomfortable. Very
insurrection.
same thing
That's
with
exactly
Curtis
what the
Sliwa.
civil rights
The question
era
is
cases
it too
established
late
you
now? A
cannot
lot of
do.
New Yorkers are
State
about to
officials
start
cannot
voting.
obstruct federal officers executing their lawful duties. And Bondi's response? If they think I won't charge them, they have not met me. Now here's where it gets even darker. In Illinois, specifically in Broadview, just west of Chicago, protesters have been staging what they're calling cop watches outside ICE facilities. But these aren't peaceful observers with clipboards. We're talking about masked individuals showing up in tactical gear, filming agents, following their vehicles, posting their license plates online. On multiple occasions, things have turned violent. Byron York, a Fox News contributor and political analyst, put it perfectly this morning when he laid out the statistics on political violence in America.
A remarkable agreement, 85% on both sides, that political violence is increasing. And when you look, we've just seen the politically motivated assassination of Charlie Kirk, the politically motivated assassination of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, the politically motivated shooting of President Donald Trump, and the other politically motivated assassination attempt of him, plus attacks on Governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, the murder of the former Speaker of the House in Minnesota, Melissa Hortman, plus all of this violence we're seeing in the streets now. An incredible Antifa attack on July 4th in Texas, where Antifa protesters had AR-15s, bulletproof vests, intending to kill, and the attack on ICE in Dallas, where 2 people were killed. So how can anybody not think that political violence is increasing?
We've just seen the politically motivated assassination of Charlie Kirk, the politically motivated assassination of Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, politically motivated shooting of President Donald Trump, and the other politically motivated assassination attempt of him, plus attacks on governors of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, the murder of the former Speaker of the House in Minnesota, plus all of this violence we are seeing in the streets now. Incredible. How can anybody not think that political violence is increasing? He's right. And what's driving it? Rhetoric from Democrat politicians who frame ICE agents as jackbooted thugs, who compare immigration enforcement to Gestapo tactics, who tell their supporters that resisting federal law enforcement is not just acceptable but necessary. When you dehumanize law enforcement officers, when you tell people they're Nazis for enforcing immigration law, when you create online tools to track and expose them, what do you think is going to happen? The California attack isn't an isolated incident. It's the inevitable result of months of escalating rhetoric and coordinated resistance. And now Attorney General Bondi is drawing a line. If you obstruct federal law enforcement, if you endanger federal agents, if you encourage violence, you will be prosecuted. Full stop. The preservation letters have been sent, the investigations are underway, and Democrat politicians who thought they could hide behind their offices and their sanctuary state laws are about to learn that federal law applies to everyone, even governors, even members of Congress. So here we are, patriots, a defining moment for America, not just about immigration policy or partisan politics. This is about whether we are still a nation of laws, whether federal authority means anything, whether Democrat politicians can openly defy, obstruct, and endanger federal law enforcement without consequences. Attorney General Pam Bondi just answered that question with a resounding no. The preservation letters are sent, the investigations are open, and the message is crystal clear. If you obstruct federal agents, you will be prosecuted. If you endanger their lives, you will face federal charges. If you encourage violence against law enforcement, there will be accountability. No exceptions for governors, no special treatment for members of Congress. Federal law applies to everyone. And you know what that means? Panic. Absolute panic in every sanctuary city and blue state across America. Because for years, decades really, Democrat politicians have operated under the assumption that they were untouchable, that they could virtue signal about immigration, declare their cities sanctuaries, refuse to cooperate with federal law enforcement, and face zero consequences. They thought state sovereignty gave them immunity. They thought their offices protected them. They thought wrong. The California attack on Thursday night wasn't just an isolated incident of violence. It was the inevitable result of rhetoric that dehumanizes law enforcement. When you call ICE agents fascists, when you compare immigration enforcement to Nazi Germany, when you create online tools to track and expose federal officers, what do you think is going to happen? You're painting targets on their backs? You're telling unstable people that attacking these officers is justified? even heroic. And now we're seeing the consequences. A U-Haul truck used as a battering ram against a military base. Protesters in Chicago chanting for violence against ICE online portals designed to dox federal agents and their families. This isn't protest. This isn't resistance. This is coordinated obstruction of federal law enforcement, and it's illegal. The statistics don't lie. 85% of Americans, Democrats and Republicans, agree that political violence is increasing. We've seen assassinations. We've seen attempted assassinations of a sitting president. We've seen attacks on governors, murders of political figures, and now systematic violence against federal agents. And who's fueling it? The same politicians who spent years telling their supporters that law enforcement officers are the enemy. But here's what they didn't count on. Pam Bondi, an attorney general who spent her career as a prosecutor, who knows how to build cases, who understands federal obstruction statutes, who is not intimidated by big names or political power. When she says she's investigating Nancy Pelosi, she means it. When she tells J.B. Pritzker to preserve his emails, she's building a case. When she warns that these politicians will be prosecuted, she's not bluffing. And you can see it in their responses. Pelosi's office released a statement calling the investigation politically motivated harassment. Pritzker held a press conference claiming the administration is attacking free speech. Lori Lightfoot accused the DOJ of trying to silence dissent. They're scrambling. They're lawyering up. They know they crossed a line. Because here's the thing about federal obstruction laws. Intent matters, but ignorance is not a defense. If you knowingly interfere with federal officers executing their lawful duties, that's Section 111 of Title 18 of the United States Code. If you disclose information about federal agents that could lead to harassment or physical harm, that's 18 U.S.C. Section 119. If you conspire to impede federal immigration enforcement, that's 8 U.S.C. Section 1324. These aren't obscure statutes. These are well-established federal crimes with serious penalties. And Bondi just put every sanctuary city politician on notice. The statute of limitations hasn't expired. Evidence is being preserved. Cases are being built. And when the indictments come, and they will come, there will be no place to hide behind blue state immunity or partisan politics. So here's my question for you. Do you support holding politicians accountable for obstructing federal law enforcement? Do you think Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for helping create an ICE tracker that endangers federal agents? Do you think J.B. Pritzker should face charges for threatening to arrest ICE officers? Drop your answer in the comments. Because this isn't a rhetorical question. This is the fight that will define whether America remains a nation of laws or descends into chaos where Democrat politicians believe they're above federal authority. And if you think this story needs to be seen by more people, and trust me, CNN and MSNBC are not going to cover it honestly, hit that share button. Send this video to everyone you know, because the only way we win this fight is if patriots like you refuse to let the mainstream media bury the truth. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, because Attorney General Bondi promised prosecutions are coming, and you can bet we'll be covering every single indictment, every court filing, every moment when Democrat politicians who thought they were untouchable face federal accountability. This is the American Diary. We don't apologize for the truth. We don't back down from exposing corruption. And we sure as hell don't let politicians who endanger law enforcement officers get away with it. The investigations are underway. The preservation letters are sent. The evidence is being compiled. And America is about to see whether we're still a nation where laws mean something, or whether Democrat politicians can obstruct federal authority with impunity. Stay loud, patriots. The battle for law and order in America is just beginning.